Well, afternoon all. TechWriter, which has been through quite a lot of development since Martin Burton took over, it's an exceptional program really. I mean, that's the basic design of it is exceptional, and Martin has really polished it up quite a lot. There are a large number of bits of stationery that come as standard. Some of these I've created for my own use, things like Colin Exam, New Standard Paper, Scroggy, and so on. The rest of it comes as standard, is built in, and you can create any stationery you wish. If I just open New Standard Paper, then at the moment this looks just like any EasiWriter document when you open it, even though I opened it from TechWriter. And I really ought to have changed the scaling from 100 to at least 120 to get a better image on the screen when I do my editing. And the thing about EasiWriter and TechWriter, and in fact writing, is based around the concept of structures, which is its greatest blessing and possibly also its greatest curse. As an example, I'll put some text in, and you won't have to watch me type it because built in is lorem ipsum. And if I do Control-Shift-P, it will put in a paragraph with a heading, and then if I do Control-Shift-O, I can put some more paragraphs in. If I do another Control-Shift-P and then a few more Control-Shift-O's, we can soon fill the page up to show the way the structures can be confusing. Now at the moment this is all just plain text. You can tell it's just plain text because if you put the cursor anywhere and click on this text selection icon at the top, every time you click it will go up one step the structure. So it's gone from being adjacent to a character to the paragraph, and then if I click again it selects the document body and select it again, and it's selected the entire document. But between document body and document there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of change, and in this case there's no visible change. If I click with adjust, I can go back through the sequence. You can also click menu on that icon, and you can select what you want to select within the document. What I'm going to do first of all is to apply a chapter structure, and all I have to do is to select from near the beginning to near the end of what I want to be a chapter, and click on the chapter heading or the chapter icon, and that puts that isolated paragraph in as centered heading, and if I start to click on that in text selection, we find that first of all it described it as a paragraph, and really all it's done within the document has selected the text. But if I click again, it recognises it as a chapter heading, and so I can change the chapter heading in any way I wish. If I click on the font icon, I can change it to almost any of the fonts that I've got in here. So if I want to make it really ugly and apply interact, and perhaps even change the size, so I could change the size, and you can do whatever you like. I'll come back to that in a moment. If I create the remainder of the document, chapter. You can see that the chapter heading has remained as was originally set before I made it look rather ugly up there. But if I go back to that chapter heading, you'll notice that there's the asterisk, the one that tells you that things have changed, just like the asterisk in the title bar. If I now right-click on that, just click, and click on Update, it will update every other chapter heading throughout the entire document to the modified form. One big advantage, I mean, this is rather like changing a style in impression. You could apply, or you could, yes, whenever you change a style, it automatically updates the whole document. With this, I could have just left that particular chapter heading in that rather ugly format. So any more chapters that I create will look like that. If I put the cursor somewhere inside the chapter and start selecting again, then I've got the chapter body, which is just the content of the chapter less the chapter heading. And if I wished, I could select, say, a pair of paragraphs and apply a subheading. Now, the thing about that is that one of the paragraphs has now become emboldened. And I rather suspect that if you were to do that yourself, that's not really what you anticipated. The thing is that every time it reaches a hard return, it assumes that that is the end of the heading. So if I put a hard return in, we just get that short section appearing as the heading for the subparagraph. Personally, I don't like subparagraphs indented, so I could go to the section body and even further to the whole section and change the start of the line. Now this gives you continuously adjustable positions, but if you hold Shift down, then it will go with the actual markers along the ruler, so it'll lock to that. If I were to export this document as a text document, although you can see spaces between paragraphs, you shouldn't see them if I did a text save, and I'll just drop that. You'll see there are no extra hard returns between the paragraphs, and that's because by default EasiWriter always allows you to adjust the spacing. Now that's the entire document, and it says the spacing after a paragraph is just 2 points. Let's just make it pretty obvious. Let's suppose I change that to 12 points, and you can see the gaps between the paragraphs have suddenly jumped up. When I first put lorem ipsum into this, I realised that there was a bigger gap between this line and this heading. And if I look at that particular paragraph and look at the space after the paragraph there, it's still 2 points. But if I look at the chapter body, and I look at the spacing there, let's go to the whole chapter. It's by default, it's made it 8 points. Now I haven't done that. This is a default setting built into the chapter structure. And you'll notice it took me a couple of goes to find out that that was the case. And I think this is where, for people who just want to easily input text and manipulate it, this is where EasiWriter and TechWriter, I won't say they fall down, but they follow a totally different path to something like Publisher. You have to be aware that the structures themselves have properties, and unless you've got the structure selected, you can't find out what all these properties are. So, that's just making one of the points, one of the important points about EasiWriter. And it's this idea of structure. One of the things that Martin Wertner has done since he took over is to introduce two things which are useful. Structure bars, so we can select chapters, and there the chapter is, we've got two separate chapters. You can see the brace there covers the second chapter, but also we can have a look at sections, and so it's now put in a red brace which delineates that particular section. And you can also get it to look at, although I haven't got any in here at the moment, lists and figures. The other innovation that he came up with is the structure view, which is another window, which is a simplified view of the document itself. And you can expand the chapters that are shown, and I could double click on a paragraph. It just shows, you know, a first sample of what's in that paragraph, and so I can select stuff from the structure view. One very good feature he's got is that if you've created something that you're not happy with, then you can in fact click on this icon, which gets rid of the structure that you've applied. That goes back to what it was before I applied the section style. And if I applied the section style again, then there we are. It's also not only deleted the section style, but it deleted the amendments I made to the section style. That's basically because I haven't updated it. So these are very useful things. A picture is actually can be treated like a paragraph. If I want to put a picture in there, then it creates a placeholder for it, and I can just drag in an image. That one's a chain home radar station from the Second World War. Don't know which one it is. But you can see 3 transmitter towers, which are steel, and 4 wooden receiver towers. We can get rid of that just by doing the back button, or we click it again and it reverts back to as it was. If I wanted to, if I hadn't actually got the cursor in it, if it didn't have the red outline, if I clicked on it and clicked on picture, well, already picture had been selected for. If I want to delete it, then I simply hit the backspace button, and off it goes. Sometimes people want text to flow around a picture, which has its limitations because of the nature of EasiWriter, which is it's a document processor rather than a page layout system. And if I were to put the cursor at the beginning of that paragraph and drag the picture in, I make sure that it's left aligned. As soon as I clicked on the left alignment, you can see that not just that first part of the line, if I revert, you'll see, it's put that at the beginning of what was that line. I think those particular elements of the line were originally on here, but as soon as the picture goes in, of course, it pushes everything across. But once I left align it, then the text flows. But then, you know, you might want the top of the image and the top of the text to align, and you can do that by holding down Control and then pulling with Select, and it's only a short paragraph, so it doesn't completely flow around. At the moment, the text runs slap bang up against the picture. But if we double-click with Select on the picture, we can change the right-hand margin. And if I make that a negative number, for example, I'll put -10 in there and click on that, you can see that the limit of the picture has moved outwards. You won't see that red line in the printed document, but the text has now been pushed to one side. And of course you can change that to something which, for some reason, tends to become -9.9, but never mind. If I make that -5, then that looks a bit more reasonable. And of course, as soon as you click outside the picture, then all you've got is that faint grey line to indicate where the limits are. At the moment, I can see that there's no space between the picture and the D of Dolore. So if I put a space in, then all that text lines up nicely alongside the right-hand margin of the picture. So that is some of the things that you can do with it, but of course there's a whole lot more. We've got lists that we can apply. So, for example, if I put the cursor at the end of that paragraph down here and click on the list icon, then it puts in the default character for the start of the list, and I can put some rubbish in, and every time I press return I get another list item. If you want to get out of the list though, because there's the end of it, if I press return I just create another list item. So if I was at the end of that list, like all the structures, if you want to get out of the structure, there's another icon on the toolbar. I click on that, and when I next press return, I get the cursor jump into the right margin out of the list. If I click in the list itself and then go to the text selector and work my way up, I've got the list body and then the entire list. Now, if I right click on list style, and this field always changes to mirror whatever structure you've selected here, you can You can have it bulleted, or you can have it auto numbering. So if I did that, it just changes the preceding
can you have
item.
alphabetic as well if you want?
Yeah. So again, if I right click on list style, I could go for a label, and I could have letters. It comes out like so. I could always change the bullet point. If I think H, if I change that to Selwyn, there you get a nice box effect. If you find that the spacing between this leading character and the rest isn't sufficient, then if we go back one level, there we are. So you can change the spacing. Tables. Right. Ooh, tables are fun. So if I now put in a table, we find we've got a single cell spanning the whole width of the document. And a single cell table isn't all that useful. There may be uses for it, but I don't know of any. But if I press tab repeatedly, I create, and you can see there the different columns being created. And if I want to create rows, I just keep pressing return. All I've got at the moment, I'm in a text position. So if I select that, it thinks there's a paragraph there, even though there's no characters being typed. But then it picks up the bottom row of cells, and if I click again, it picks up the column of cells. And if I click again, it selects the whole table. And if I click again, we're into document body, so go back to table. Now, if I click on table style, that's select click, there's a very important box here, which is automatic column widths, which is what it comes with by default. If you don't like that, you can create a default document that doesn't have this set in the text. So, select on table style, turn off automatic column widths, okay, and all of a sudden you notice that the column separator bars appear. By default it's centered, and if you want to start adjusting precise positions, what you need to do is make it left aligned. I don't know what it does inside the program to allow you then to do the things that you want to do, but if you leave it centered, you find it doesn't behave according to logic, at least not according to mine. Once you are in this position with automatic column widths, the limits are changed to bars, and we can bring those in. If I put some text in these columns, if I finish that with a tab, it will simply take me to the next column. But were I to have finished it with a return, it has taken me to the next row. If you want to put in another row in the middle of a table, then you need to go to Structure, Table, and of course if you weren't in the table structure, the table would have been greyed out. So it won't let you do inappropriate things to different structures. And if you want to add a row, you can do Control-Shift-A, which will add it above, or Control-Shift-B, which will add it below. So that's fairly useful. At the moment, everything is left aligned, and of course, very often in tables, you like things to line up differently. So you can select all the cells This is not the table, this is just selecting the cells, and you can make them centered. And notice that the table itself, if I select the whole table, you'll notice that the table itself is still left aligned, even though the individual cells are centered. And you can do different things with them. You can apply different styles. There's a table which has all the internal divisions. I think they're 1 point and a double 1 point line all the way around the outside, which is a very common thing, or it could be just a line of different thickness. If I select that particular table and click on this icon, I have the ability to change various things. I could change the background colour of the whole table. I could change the background, the colour of the outside rules. I could, if let's say I unticked that, I could click on OK, and we would have a table with no rule at the bottom. But it's important that if you're going to change a property of the entire table, that you do so with the table itself selected. If I look at, let me just have a look at those for a moment. I think, no, they must all have different properties, because none of these boxes is ticked. If I were to select that particular one and see what I've got, there the rightmost margin of the cell is active, so is the bottom of the cell, and if I wanted to, let's say, just to make it obvious, if I want to change the colour to red, then those are the only lines that change. The other thing I wanted to show you was it's got a very neat trick, because if you choose a CSV file, very simple CSV file, very simple indeed, but if I take that file and I drag it into the current cursor position, it automatically creates a table from it, which is very useful. On the other hand, I've modified that file to make it tab separated instead of comma separated, and if I drag that in, it doesn't. It's just text with tabs and returns, which isn't terribly helpful. But if I create a table just by clicking on that, I get a single cell. But if I then drag that TSV file, it automatically creates the proper table from the TSV file. So that can be quite useful, depending on what you do.